Hello there, welcome to another edition of the Open Governance Initiative, the OGI. This is the program that takes stock of the National Development Plan, NDP 2018-2021. And like we do all the time, we bring you relevant ministries, departments, sectors that are pretty much crucial in this drive and take stock of what exactly they're doing in consolidating the gains as registered in the NDP. My name is Fatu Eli Kamaloshi, and in this edition, we'll be looking at the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Joining me here on the conversation will be the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Mr. Sehu Sanyang, and with him here is the Executive Director at the National Sports Council, Mr. Marcel Mendy. Together, they will help me expand the conversation right here on GRTS. Don't forget, we're also on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, on our YouTube, and as well our Twitter to keep up on the conversation and send in your comments and questions. We'll be taking stock of those here on the program as well. When we come back from this break, the program starts proper. Welcome back to the OGI. My name is Fatu Eli Kamaloshi, and like I said in the beginning, our guests today are the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Mr. Sehu Sanyang. PS, you're welcome to the OGI.
Thank you very much.
And with him here is the Executive Director at the National Sports Council, Mr. Marcel Mendy. You're also welcome, Mr. Mendy.
Thank you so much for having us. It's always a pleasure.
Right, much obliged. We're going to start, of course, with you, PS. It's great to have you here. But when you look at your slogan first, caught my attention. The future are the youth. Why the future?
Thank you very much for having me here. I would like to begin by giving you our vision first. And that is to create an environment where all the youth folk of this country will converge as an entity with a view to develop them into entrepreneurs and to be able to, for them to contribute to national development and sports also, and also to add value to sports. That's our vision. Our mission is to attain those objectives. And that is to ensure that people participate effectively and meaningfully in sports, and also they gain entrepreneurial skills and are also able to play part in good leadership, as well as ensuring that they are gainful members of society for the future. So this is what the Ministry of Youth and Sports is all about in terms of our vision and our mission.
So the goal is the future?
Yes, it's the future.
Why the future? Why not now? Can't, you get a lot of people also say that, the saying that young people are the future leaders. They are, in fact, the leaders of now.
I must tell you that I am a pessimist in that endeavor.
Is it?
I am of the view that the youth folk are already participating in the process of national development. And I don't believe in the idea that they should wait till the future comes, because they are expected to learn during the process of becoming something tomorrow from the elders. And if you see, the way we are trying to develop them, our youth folk, is one, to be able to train them to be entrepreneurs, and that cannot be done in isolation. They have to be part and parcel of any process, and they have to be on board in terms of the decisions that are taken in areas where they are to be trained as entrepreneurs and as meaningful members of society, and to be able to employ themselves. And this is in line with our NDP priority 711, where we are calling for the youth of the country to be trained in entrepreneurial skills and be able to employ themselves for the future. So it holds that when they are part of that process, it will enlighten them from the onset, and the future will be much further bright.
Interesting, and that will take me to my next question, because the young people here constitute about 60% of the population. And when I look at the NDP, I see, yes, they've been mentioned briefly. Maybe that is to say that in terms of demographics, it's important that they are mainstreamed. So when you look at all the other sectors and their priority areas, you realize that indeed young people and women, gender to be precise, have been highlighted across all sectors. Practically, has that been the case?
Well, the statistics has been said that there are over 60% of our population, and that is quite true. But with the advent of the coming into force of the youth policy, the new youth policy of 2019 to 2028, the age bracket for youth is defined from 15 to 35 years. Okay. So you will see one would need to have a demographic representation of this particular cohort to be able to determine the exact population of our youth folk in numbers in terms of who are men and who are women. Okay.
Now, so I'm talking about how the different sectors are cognizant of the fact that their participation in all these development spheres are very crucial in the development of the country. That is written theoretically, but I'm asking now, practically, is that manifesting?
It is manifesting. We are collaborating with many sectors, like the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministries of Agriculture, Trade, Industry and Employment, and the Ministry of Higher Education. In that some of the trainings that we do, we collaborate with them. We have our agricultural centers. You've heard of some of the centers up country. In all the regions, we have our agricultural centers where youth folk are being trained in terms of one, learning how to be productive by learning agricultural skills, entrepreneurial skills, and all other sectors that will make them productive for the future. But we are having collaboration with all these sectors, and it's working as I'm speaking to you, because the LADE project funded the Nyani very part of the youth National Youth Service Scheme who are working there now, and they've provided tractors, and up country also we are collaborating with various sectors, NGOs and other charitable organizations to develop our youth folk. So the collaboration is immense. Yeah, it's immense.
I like the fact that you said collaboration, because most of the projects we see are mostly funded and initiated by other agencies that we see coming into the country. Are you saying that the ministry is indeed taking the initiatives in this area?
The ministry is indeed taking the initiatives, and this is why in 2015 that I met that project there, and this is called the Songhai project. You heard of the GSI, where we went and we had an agreement with the United Nations Development Program. It was a 5-year project, and it has ended, but we are able to extend it, amounting to $550,000 But the idea is, one, to train the youth of the country, of the selected youth, in entrepreneurial skills, and for them to be able to replicate those skills for gainful employment, and be able to also replicate the project elsewhere within the country. And this is why we have now started the Kundam Farm, similar to the GSI, where so many kids are working, about 150. But for now, for the GSI, about 80 students are there, and we intend to expand the center with an additional 25 hectares, so that they can replicate the knowledge that they have gained during their 1-year, 6-month training, and say in the next year or two they'll also be productive and be able to generate their own income. They will also phase out, and then the other batch will come, and things will go like that. And I'm also, as I'm speaking to you, 40 of our guys are now under contract with FAO, 1-year contract, and we expect that to be renewed. And most of the people who have graduated from the center are really doing well in other sectors of the economy, particularly agribusiness.
Yeah. We like the area of the numbers, and also the fact that you're monitoring how they're going on with the progress in making sure that things they learn are really yielding fruition. But this question that I want to also ask might also be to strengthen this particular point, which is the fact that your premium role as a ministry is to provide policy direction for the smooth implementation of youth and sports activities and programs throughout the country, right? Tell us, do you feel that as a ministry, you've been listened to in this area? And if so, how do we agree to this?
We've been listened to, because if you look at how we implement our programs, we don't normally implement them in isolation. We go to communities, discuss with them, and during those discussions, they will put in their ideas, and we will now mobilize the requisite resources with all other agencies so that we can, get the project started. This is a case in point is the Kerawan Agricultural Farm, where we have a big garden under the Tekefi project, funded by the GIZ in collaboration with the Youth Empowerment Project of the United Nations, where we have some youth who are working there, making money from the work that they are doing there. And you'll be surprised, recently, one of the biggest onion producers is in that area, a youth who has obtained some money from the work that he did, and then now he's transformed it into several beds of onions, and the harvest is expected to be bumper. So we collaborate with people in that way. We don't just go and then work in isolation. Of course, we implement through other agencies or our satellite agencies. The National Sports Council is one of them, and the President's Empowerment Scheme is one of the PIA initiative is one of them, and all those things. So these are the satellite institutions and the NSC, NYC, and NEDI.
I'm also interested. I'm interested in the fact that you mentioned how these young people or this young person is expected to yield a bumper harvest in this onion production. But also, we have to make sure that when we expose them to some of these areas, that the impact is sustainable as well, or the dividends that they yield in is indeed sustainable. Because when we talk about these productions, we're also looking at access to markets, right? How are we making sure that the chain is sustainable?
Our NDP priority 712 is looking at that part from that angle, whereby they'll be able to create a mechanism whereby they can sell their produce, register their companies, add value to what they produce, and then sell their produce. We are having that, and that's why we have these needy trainings being taken around the country. So
and how is that coming along?
That is very, very successful, because we have several women trained in terms of food processing and all those things that they add value things to. Assistance is also coming from the development partners in terms of building their capacities in preservation of food items for sale, and also for registration of their companies, so that they can add value to whatever they do.
Let me just put a halt to that and shift to the Executive Director at the National Sport Council. You mentioned briefly some of the satellite institutions you're working with, and Mr. Marcel himself is here, very much involved in the world of sports, especially here in the country. And just maybe, Mr. Mendy, you can tell us briefly how the developments in sports are really coming along. You mentioned how the PS said they're very cognizant of the policies that they, incorporating in the national plan, just to make sure that sports and young people are very much catered for. How do you see this coming in your own perspective?
Thank you so much one more time. Like I said earlier on, it's always a pleasure to be around, and particularly talking about some of the things that we do. But coming back to your question, so far everything is going on very well as planned. Looking at what is enshrined in the NDP and what we've been able to achieve so far, we are quite satisfied and pleased with the gains registered. Talking about sport, you realize that we've been able to achieve a lot over the years. We've been able to send a lot of young people outside the country, send them on training and all of that in high-performance training centers. Like, for instance, the athletes, most of them are doing better than before in terms of their timings. We have been able to win some medals as well. We've been able to win some competitions.
I like the fact that you started off with athletes and not football in the first place, because the idea of the football thing gaining so much dominance at the expense of the athlete is something I do not, others as well, basketball and tennis, I don't know.
Oh yeah, we're doing quite well in all of those. Even judo, we are doing very well too. As I talk to you right now, our judoka, Alex Fainjai, is the silver medalist in his category of the 73 kilograms in Africa. Can you believe that? In other words, he's the second best in Africa in the 73 kilograms. We are doing similar things in volleyball as well. Our under-19 just came home some time ago after they won a bronze medal in Nigeria. The Paralympics as well. They just came back home with some gold medals, some silver medals, in some competitions in Morocco. As well, one of them just returned from Manchester about 2-3 weeks ago, where he was trying to compete with a view to ensuring that he qualifies for the Paralympics, Olympic Games. So all of them really are doing quite well. Wrestling as well, we are doing quite well. Volleyball, basketball. So indeed, we are moving steadily, and we are confident that some way, somehow, we will achieve that which is enshrined in the NDP.
Steadily, you say. But let me just come back to the PS here, right? You mentioned summarily your vision. Right. I'd like us to look at this proper, and just to read it out in quotes, that your vision statement reads, to be perceived as the center of platform for empowering youths as effective aggregates in national development and for excellence in sports that generates value. At first, I like that this reads vision statement. So let's break it down, right? Starting with youth empowerment. When you look at the employment rate, I take it that you're good with numbers, so maybe you can correct me when I'm wrong. From 2018 to 2020, there has been more like a continuous increase in the unemployment rate. But of course, that cannot be said, it cannot be compared to 2017 downwards, because the numbers were worse, right, compared to what we're seeing now. But how are you facilitating the employability of all employable youth in curtailing this trend?
Currently, I am pleased to inform you that the number of NYSS intake, National Youth Service Scheme intake, will be increased from 100 to 150, and as opposed to the initial number of 100. But we are working on that as a beginner to the precursor to for the actualization or commencement of the service, national service itself in the country. I'm currently the director of the NYSS is working on a paper with a view to present it to cabinet for us to start its operationalization. This will enable the youth folk to concentrate on reinforce the little knowledge that they have during that attachment period, and also from the education that they've gained, they'll be able to. It will, as the mission mentioned, it will be able to mold them to become better leaders of tomorrow.
It's the vision, actually.
And then the entrepreneurial skills that are gained it will add value to their entrepreneurial skills. And during that process, most of them will even be able to go forward to do other meaningful things where they can be able to stand alone as individuals and as people who will contribute positively to national development. Right. So this is the concept for that. But having said that also, we have, I hope you've heard of the National Youth, the levy, Youth and Sports levy.
We've not heard
of that
yet.
And I'm pleased to inform you that has started. Okay. Myself and the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Youth and Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, my counterpart, we just signed a memorandum of understanding to start operationalizing it. It's about $22 million. And as I'm speaking to you, already trained entrepreneurs have started accessing the requisite funds. And this is also going together with the trainings that are being given to those entrepreneurs so that they can, one, operate on their own and be able to employ others, and if need be, replicate what they have learned to other areas of the country.
Why are
this
these
is countrywide, by the way.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? But why is it not like in the open, generally, for people to really see and understand? And do you have like a specific criteria or requirements of the kind of businesses you will invest this into?
Yeah, we have currently the process. This is how it goes. People are identified in communities. KMC has already been done. Myself, I do deliver lectures there during the entrepreneurship education programs as an entrepreneurship training of trainers. I'm an entrepreneurship trainer of trainers. And one of the training, but I did that a long time ago at the GTTI in 2005. So we participated in it countrywide. We've done the one for URR, and currently The one for LRR is ongoing. So several hundred people are being trained within this year alone by NEDI, and those people are going to be given their startups, their own startups, from those funds, and they'll be able to at least go into the society. And this is quite in line with the NDP.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, is it coming from the government coffers
itself? It's
itself?
coming from us,
okay.
Yeah, from the National Sports Levy. Nice. And currently, the SDF, Social Development Fund, NEDI, there was this talk of who will qualify to disburse, to make the disbursements, but being the having the fiduciary role of money disbursement, SDF was, seen to be the qualified one, and as a result, after consultations with the relevant line ministry, we were able to at least host it there. But NEDI is part of it, and a committee has been set up, a technical management committee, to look into people who are vet them, their applications, and then when they qualify, they are given.
And this is the pilot, right?
It's a pilot. They call it pilot, but it's ongoing.
It's ongoing, actually.
We want to keep it going also.
Very well.
We don't want to stop it. Currently, 22 million, and there is a possibility of, it's going to be a revolving kind of loan, because you have to provide your collateral before you access it.
Nice. But in maximizing job opportunities as well, you do realize that it must begin from the roots, right? And that is to say the schools, in fact. How do we make sure that the models that are being, that these students are being exposed to are pretty much dynamic, right? And I believe, that is crucial, and I want to understand whether you as the Ministry of Youth is part of this revolution, because we are aware of the fact that, the different ministries, education ministries, are pretty much concerned about that and revising the curriculum. I ask because the youth are who we graduate from high school, and we expect that when they graduate from, tertiary level or whatever the case may be, skills centers, that they become gainfully employed.
We are currently working with the University of the Gambia to build a curriculum so that at the end of the day, people who we want to train will follow those, the provisions of the curriculum that will be created, and we will be able to use the curriculum to train them to be able to the matching knowledge, so that they can do something, because it appears that there is a mismatch with what we have right now in the schools in terms of when you leave school, what you go and do. So we are aware of that. We are not. We are working on that with the other sectors, including the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, and of course higher education. We collaborate closely with them in terms of developing those things. The PSP, particularly the PS higher education, is very, very keen.
And you're hopeful that
and ensuring also that there is continuity in the current projects that we are doing. And most of the PSs, during the last virtual retreat of PSs, they highlighted this issue of how now do we address the sustainability of what we are doing. And my response was that we are consolidating the gains by people who are starting by expanding where most of our establishments are. The Songhai is the example that I gave you earlier. Expand it by 25 hectares, and people who just graduated by the end of the year will just move in and then start their own production, and they will be learning. It will be a continuous process, so that others also will gain. But we are aware that there is a need to match what you learn as an entrepreneur and what you do during your entrepreneurial activity to gain
income. Would in fact come back to that as well. But let me just shift to Mr. Marcel here again, because I'm going to come back to the second part of the vision, which says, and for excellence in sports that generates value. Do you think that the sports fraternity is pretty much generating much value as we speak? Because if anything is to be of value, there has to be worthy investment.
We are quite convinced that that is happening, because I can tell you this for free, that there hasn't been investment in sport in the Gambia more than now. You may wish to know that the government, through the Ministry of Youth and Sport, is constructing mini stadia in each region. We are as well trying to transform the former wrestling arena at the Independence Stadium to a multi-purpose lawn. that could be used by volleyball, basketball, taekwondo, judo. We are as well working with partners, the EU, the GCCI, to ensure as well that wrestling arenas are being constructed in every region in the country. So indeed there hasn't been investment in sport more than what we have now. So that goes to show that indeed a lot of support is being given to this, a lot of commitment is being shown in this area. As well, like the PS said earlier on, we know in order for us to have the excellence that we want to achieve in sport, we need to invest in the athletes, but as well invest in the technicians, the administrators as well. And that is all the more the reason why we conceived the idea of having a department of kinesiology at the UTG, with a view to ensuring that we have some of those that are interested in taking up a career in sport go there, and do their program. Like the PS said earlier.
Has that started, or it's just something you've just initiated?
We are at the stage of developing the curriculum. In fact, we already got a draft curriculum. It's just a question of finalizing it, and sooner than later the program will start, and we'll start having people graduate with their BAs or BSs in sport something, that will go a long way in helping us achieve our dreams of excellence in our sport, because there is no way really that we can achieve that if we don't have the well-trained people, if we don't have the right personnel. I mean, the athletes can only do well if we have the right personnel. No matter how good they are, you can only bring out the best in them, if they have the right coaches, if they have the right administrators. And this is one fundamental thing, that is to have them trained and trained well.
I mean, the expansion is very much necessary, but before we go there, it's important that we solve what we're faced with right now, and that is to say, the resources that we have, the equipment we're using, how we're nurturing our local champions locally. Those facilities, are they pretty much up and running in this country? Where are we lacking? Because as we speak, our champion athlete, Gina, I understand, doesn't train in the country here. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. Let me make this very clear. As an athlete, you get to a point, you have to train only at a high-performance training center.
So we don't have a high-performance training center?
No, we don't have a high-performance training center, and you don't have high-performance training centers everywhere. You have high-performance training centers in only a few countries. Like in Africa, I'm aware there is one in South Africa, there is one in Senegal, and 1 or 2 other countries. So you realize that the best athletes around, or the best athletes within the continent, are taken there or sent to the high-performance training centers for them to train. You don't have high-performance training centers in every country.
So we cannot have it here as well. What, is it expensive, or we can't sustain it if we do?
Not about that, but it has to do with the International Athletics Federation, or well, now it's called the World Athletics. Okay. They have a part to play in it and all of that. So it's not a question of us as a country wanting to have a high-performance training center, then we have one. No, it has to do with the World Athletics and the IOC and all of those bodies. They need to come in and agree. Okay, fine, we need to have this here, because they need to send in the equipment, they need to send the trainers and all of that. So it's not just a question of any country wanting to have one and they go ahead and have it in place.
The grassroots as well. I'm happy that you mentioned the mini stadia, because I was going to come back to the PS with that. How are you nurturing those talents down there? The athletes, the great footballers coming out of there. Most times it's the resources that is blocking them from excelling to higher heights.
Yeah, I mean, I quite agree, and that is why we have realized that as a ministry, as a National Sport Council, and that is why we are doing what we are doing now. Just in addition to what we've been doing, there is also this discussion amongst us to have what we call Athletes Award Scheme, so that if Senghor goes and wins a gold medal for the Gambia, he knows if I go back home, I'll get this amount in terms of money.
They should be rich. They should not be there. I mean, let's just
speak it. We have started this discussion amongst ourselves within the ministry. We are calling it an Athletes Award Scheme, so that those that go and win, let's say, gold medal or silver medal or bronze medal, are sure if they come home, they get something. So that is one way of motivating them. That is one way as well of encouraging parents to allow their children, to do sport. As well, it will go go a long way in encouraging the grassroots. But in addition to what we are doing, one thing that we are doing is that we have national sport associations, and we are insisting that every national sport association must have a program for students, must have a school program, so that we are sure that all of them will go into the schools. The athletes or the kids will start from school and do their sport, and eventually, grow with it so that they become better as they grow.
Even strengthening the PE that is usually in schools. I know that when we were back then, it used to be very serious. Now I barely hear my little sisters talking about taking sportswear to school because of physical education.
I mean that's quite right. We have a feeling that this program that we are working on at the UTG, because those days you go to schools, not every PE teacher is a trained PE teacher. I mean, we have to face the realities. So that is one thing that we want to eradicate. We want to be sure that those PE teachers are indeed PE teachers, so that they just ask them to kick the ball and run and jump. You know what I'm saying? That is one thing that that we are doing. And like I said earlier on, we are collaborating with the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with a view to ensuring that the syllabus is looked into, so that this issue of PE coming back or being reinforced, is a reality, so that the kids will, of course, do their lessons, learn, but as well, do their sport.
I'll come back to you, Marcel. But P.S., you've heard everything that Marcel had to say. Would you say the same?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, shed more light onto what he has said regarding the introduction of sports in schools. In fact, recently it's a FIFA pilot project which has started in DRC, I believe, and some West African countries have also been identified for it to start, so that the kids will start from the beginning and then they'll grow up within. As working on with the university, it will address all those issues in terms of how are they going to add value, as I mentioned to you in terms of what our mission is, to whatever they do as sports persons in their individual practices and areas. So I want to concur with him that once this is ready, we'll be able to put it in place, and perhaps that would also coincide with the Gambia being one of the countries that are to be identified for this very lucrative scheme, which will help our youngsters to grow from the onset, particularly at the junior level.
Before I go on this break, I just want to ask this one question, that how you're working with the National Sport Council in terms of how you heed to the advice they give the ministry in your sports plant activities or policies, right? Because they have the expertise, and it's important that you are consulting them in making sure that what you covered is exactly what the fraternity needs.
They already have an act which was enacted in 2000. It's called the National Sports Council Act, and this act empowers them to perform certain functions, as well as under a board, of course. He is the secretary to the board as director. Okay. So we are also developing the sports policy. It's in the making. We intend to take it to cabinet, as well as to look into how we fine tune some of the contents, and if need be, popularize it for it to be operational in tandem with today's realities.
Okay, so but aside the act, in your everyday activities?
Our everyday activity, yes, they do the coordinating role with satellite institutions like the Olympic OIC, as well as the GFF. So myself and him, we are on a daily, in touch on a daily basis in terms of coordinating, because that's supposed to be the work of the permanent secretary. You don't need to be an expert in any area, but with him, we coordinate sporting activities in tandem with other affiliated bodies within the framework.
Still on the OGI here, we have the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Mr. Sehu Sanyang. With him here is the Executive Director of the National Sports Council, Mr. Marcel Mendy. We'll go on a short break. When we come back, the OGI continues, and we'll be looking at also questions you've sent to us on social media. Do stay. Welcome back to the OGI. My name is Fatih Elikamloshi, and of course, we are coming to you from the Gambia Radio and Television Services, broadcasting from the Metzi Residence Hotel. This is where we are having this interview today. Of course, you can always pass by this hotel as well. And we're talking about the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and my guests are the PS Permanent Secretary, Mr. Sehu Sanyang, and with him here is Mr. Marcel Mendy, the Executive Director at the National Sports Council. And PS, before we went on the break, we were talking about sports and just how, you know, everything is coming around in the country. And your most recent activity was reported on April 30th, right? And your minister's visit at the mini sports, the mini sports stadium was the highlight. Tell us, how is that project coming along?
The project is coming along well. In fact, the team just came back last night, 2 days back, day before yesterday. And so they've gone to all the sites, and apparently the works are going on well, except for Fulabantang, where there is an issue with the apparent relocation of somebody whom we've already compensated, whom already government compensated him to relocate, and the villagers consented for him to relocate.
No chaos, no nothing.
He's done that relocation, but actually there are some underlying issues with the contractor, which we are thrashing out next week. We will travel up country to sort that out. But to be on the safe side, it's going on smoothly. Georgetown, Janjambure is going on smoothly. Your people were in Janjambure, it's going on fine, and the other areas as well, they are all going on fine.
What's the timeline for this project?
Some of them are 20 weeks, some of them are 16 weeks. So this particular, there is no lapse yet, but we hope, because some of them need their second payment, which we are working on.
All right.
And we hope that the projects will complete on time. But as I'm mentioning to you, this particular issue at Fulabantang is still needs to be worked out so that they finish the work on time. And
you're working on that?
Yeah, I'm working on that with my team, we just came back last night.
Marcel, as the Sports Council, what has been your impression of these mini stadia? Do you think it's what we needed?
Certainly, the project is long overdue. Our opinion is that you cannot have all the mini stadia and the only stadium in the country all in the Greater Banjul area. You see, often people say, and I believe that there are few things that are found everywhere, and that is skill, knowledge, and beauty. There is no boundary to those. Anywhere you go to, you will always find people who are skillful, people who are intelligent, people who are beautiful. So given that, therefore, and in order for us to be sure that we catch all the skillful young people in this country, it is paramount that we provide them with the platform, we provide them with the infrastructure so that they can be able to exhibit that skill in them. And therefore, all the more the reason why indeed we are satisfied at the Ministry of Youth and Sport, at the National Sport Council in particular, with what is happening right now. So far, like the PS said, all the projects are going on very well. They are being closely monitored. Like he said, just about 2 days ago, a team came back having visited all the sites.
Well, what can you say about the plan, the infrastructure, and the facility itself being of the highest standard, right? I'm sure you've seen the plan and how this outlook would be. What would you say? What would you tell us about that?
Yeah, certainly all the construction work will be of high standard, because that was one of the criteria, that was one of the highlights of the agreements, of the contract agreements with the contractors. And I can assure you, they think of that, they dream of that, and that is what they are working towards achieving. And that is all the more the reason as well why we are keeping a very close eye on what they are doing, because that was what was agreed, and that is why we are monitoring them very closely. We go to visit these sites almost every 2-3 weeks, just to be sure that indeed what was agreed is what is happening here.
I'll just put a halt to that and go right onto social media to look at the questions you've been sending to us. And I'll start off with Facebook. And PS, Mr. Lamin is asking, How is he coping at youth and sports as a physical planning expert?
Okay, to begin with, as a physical planning expert, I would want to tell him that, to thank him first for asking that question. Similar remarks were made when I was moved to the Ministry of Environment. Little did people know that my bachelor's is in environmental studies, and equally little did people know that I have done 2 degrees together, international development studies. Sports and health in the context of development is my specialization, but they didn't know. Little did they know that I was offices as a senior officer coordinating all these activities at that level. So I've been part and parcel of the youth and sports fraternity. Maybe unknown to them, they may see that I've been at the Ministry of Lands for all my life. Yes, but actually I have some sports and youth blood in me in terms of how I served in the civil service for this long period of time. In all the governors' offices, organizing, assisting governors in arranging, organizing sports and all this. Okay. West Coast region, LRR, I served there in all these areas.
So that means you're coping well in this new role.
Exactly. So, definitely, I just want to inform him that I'm comfortable.
So Lamin, rest assured, he's in fact more comfortable. Right, asking. So it's good that it has been clarified. So we go on to the next question here from Mo Lamin. Sise, he's asking, right, Mr. Sanyang, either he knows anything about why the national team coach Tom Saint Fit didn't invite Ali Sow and Sheriff Sanyang to the national team. Did the coach have a personal problem with them, or we the fans want to know, please, he's pleading. The duo have been playing week in, week out in their respective clubs, Europa League, and yet the coach didn't invite them for reason best known to him, unknown yet. We the fans want to know what's the problem between the coach and the duo. Either it's personal problems or we want to know, please. Journalists ask him this question. So we don't want to censor anything here, so we try to bring out the questions. And maybe Marcel can dilate later.
My understanding is that the selection of the team vests entirely in the hands of the coach, although with some consultations. So this particular scenario, why these people are not there, I wouldn't want to preempt any reasons, but I think Marcel can throw more light on that part of the situation so that we can.
Thank you so much. We want to appreciate that question. But I just want to make one thing very clear, and that is, all of us have a responsibility to play. All of us have where we should stop. The coach was hired to help us get somewhere, and one of his responsibilities is to, ensure that he puts together a good team. So as a ministry, we will not want to get into the selection of players. That is entirely the prerogative of the head coach. Because if we want to interfere in that and the team doesn't do well, then we will not have the authority to sack the coach. Okay. But if we want to retain that authority to sack the coach or tell him that he did not do well, then we will have to refrain from involving in the selection of players. And that is why we don't want to get into that. But it is important that people raise such concerns so that we take note of them, so that in the event anything happens, we can always make reference to certain things. But we want to encourage the coach in as much as he has the prerogative to put together the team. It behoves on him to ensure that he does not take personal issues or personalize things, and make sure that he identifies or selects the players who deserve to be in the national team and nothing more. Whether he has some issues with anybody, that should not come into the job. That should not affect the selection of players.
If that's the case.
Yeah, okay. If that is the case.
Very well. But you allow him to be independent. I think that's fair enough. So this last question here is asking, okay, we've mentioned that. How is the status quo of mini stadiums being erected in the countrysides like Kiang, Manduar, and other places?
There is no hitch there. It's going on well and expected to be completed on time.
So that was it for social media. Many thanks for sending in those questions. And PS, we've been talking a lot, and it's interesting, everything that we've covered. But it's also important to talk about some of the major challenges that you might have been facing as a ministry, knowing you have over half of the population relying on you to be their amplifier in regards to guiding them to believing that their voices do matter?
Yes, you are right. The issue of budget is key, and currently, as I mentioned, we are tapping from the Youth and Sports Levy, which was a cabinet decision for us to access that this particular package. And we've started, accessing it, though, a bit slow, but it's ongoing. Finance, they are doing their best to assist us in whatever we are doing, and this is why we are able to continue the construction works at all these mini stadia across the country. By the way, their capacities are 10,000 persons.
Okay.
Yes, and then the main stadium, you know already, is 30,000 now, but right now it has, the capacity may not be able to reach that. There are certain seating capacities that are called for by CAF, so we have to try and adhere to those ones. But actually, we are planning a 60,000 capacity stadium, and the site has already been identified. Yes, and we are working on that.
That's bigger than
tirelessly,
the
yes.
Bakau Independence.
Tirelessly
I think it's
yes,
interesting
about
you've mentioned that,
60,000.
because I was going to come to the issue of that stadium as well.
So we are trying to, one, secure it and then get the proper title to it, and we are working in collaboration with the governor and the relevant authorities on the ground.
When do we expect? Do you have like a specific timeline that you're looking at?
Yeah,
doing
we are planning by the end of the year that we at least make some moves with a view to start something, to kickstart something on that, because this current stadium is the capacity.
And this current stadium cannot even hold some international games because of how it is.
Exactly, yes.
You are aware of that as well?
I'm aware of the FIFA report, the CAF report on certain stadia which was subject of newspaper coverages that we've all seen. But
I was going to come to Marcel for that, because
we are trying to address that. We are trying to address that within by intervening. And currently, as I'm speaking to you, the manager of the Friendship Hostel and the stadium is sent in a bill of quantities in terms of works that are required for us to meet the CAF standards, so that international matches can start playing.
Because Marcel, your office is in fact based in that stadium. How did you receive this news?
Well, it was quite shocking knowing that as a country we will find it difficult to accomplish that requirement or meet that requirement right away. Also as well, knowing that having our home matches played at home, is quite critical in football today. So we received it with great shock, but we had started working on it since then, and we hope that very soon we should be able to put something in place and ensure that we are not stopped from playing our home matches.
By very soon, it means that this time around, it must be done, because the issue of the stadium has been an ongoing conversation, and we're all aware of that. So it means that we need to be serious about it now. And the fact that we're having champions, in fact, all over the place. Right?
Yeah, in fact, this report is against the backdrop of the spending of millions on the refurbishment of the stadium, but those are certain facilities within the stadium. But the requirement, the fact that we now need to work on it to meet the standards that they have called for would require additional resources to meet those ones. And we are working on that very, very closely. And in fact, as I'm speaking to you now, the general manager has submitted a preliminary budget. Budget.
Yeah, because you mentioned budget earlier, right? And I do know that the Ministry of Youth and Sports is not one of those ministries that gets the biggest budget. How do you see that, to a point that young people are saying that these two entities need to be separated because youth need investment, so does sports?
That is their view, but there are processes and procedures in one merging ministries and at the same time separating them.
The budget allocated for the
budget
ministry,
allocation for our ministry is not enough, but we have recently started making moves that people have started seeing us, and this stadia construction across the country is one of them. And the fact that the national team is making progress is not without expenditure being incurred by government. In fact, it's in the tens of millions. I wouldn't remember offhand precisely the amount, but they are trying.
Very well. Marcel, we are wrapping it up now. It's been an interesting conversation. But everything that has been said around investment, it looks like you're pretty much positive about the dimension that investment in sport is taking. Would you say it's what you envisioned, or you wish that there could be more? Why?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, sport is very expensive. But then often, like it is said, every journey begins with one step. We, like I said earlier on, we are doing pretty much better now, and therefore we hope to do even more as years come and go by. So what we have now, yeah, we may not, have everything that we need. But the fact that we have something to start with, or the fact that we have something already, we want to build on that. Certainly we will need more. We are constructing mini stadia. We need as well some more facilities. We need more investment in sport. We have already started a lot of discussion around ensuring and developing our sport, motivating our athletes, supporting our athletes. We've already started as well, even discussing amongst ourselves, introducing a dual career program for athletes. So a lot of things really in the pipeline for athletes. And this is not without the support of the ministry, it's not without the support of the government. So far so good, we are quite satisfied, and we have a feeling that as we go on, government will even support more and more.
And what would be your message to those young sports enthusiasts?
Like I said a few days ago in a forum, I just want to urge everybody to ensure that they remain disciplined at all times. Because if we are asking government to put in money, if we are asking the private sector to put in money, they must be able to see that, they must be convinced that indeed these young ones want to achieve positiveness, they want to achieve greatness in this, in order for them to be convinced to invest money. But if we go to sport venues or sport events and vandalize and fight and stab and throw stones at each other, I mean, nobody will ever invest their money in something that will empower crime, that will empower chaos. So if we want more investment in what we are doing, if we want to be supported, we should do it and do it right and ensure that we remain disciplined at all times, and put up the best attitude.
Yeah, and set the right initiatives so that they can also know that we're serious about what we're saying. And P.S., obviously, to wrap it up, you've mentioned some of the satellite institutions you work with, Department of Planning and Programs we've not mentioned, but yes, a National Youth Council, National Youth Service Scheme. You've mentioned what you're going to be doing with that, the President's International Awards, National Sports Council here, NADI, and not forgetting the Independence Stadium and the Friendship Hotel. In the very near future, what are some of your biggest projects that you're looking at in terms of youth and sports development? And if possible, if you can give us timelines.
Well, I've mentioned the issue of the 60,000 capacity stadium, and this entails, we expect to collaborate and cooperate internationally, trying to get an additional stadium of a seating capacity bigger than this one. Equally, in line with our NDP priorities, particularly the priorities that I have mentioned to you, pronounce consolidation of what is gained from their training and improving, building on their capacities. These are some of the areas that we want to work as a team, and we have started working on that. The National Youth Council is endeavoring to do that, and obviously sensitize people on activities that the government is doing. Youth playing their part in terms of what the government is doing, TRRC and all the other activities were done before they even start. People were sensitized, we have been sensitized about their activities, even the National Human Rights Commission. And all this, there have been, the youth folk have been going around, the National Youth Council set up a team to go around, and this have been done. So at the moment, I want to say that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we shouldn't despair, but be very, very hopeful in terms of what we will attain in future as a sport, not only a sports ministry, but as a country, because there is a lot to be done, we know that, and there is a lot to be provided for in terms of resources. And ever since the ministry came into being, this particular, phase of the ministry is really, I mean, there is so much hope, and government is doing their best to make sure that our basic needs are met, and also we are able to plan ahead with our future programs in line with our NDP identified priority areas since 2019. And the coordination, as I have mentioned,
especially the satellite agencies,
is robust.
Very good.
It's very robust, and they are cooperative so far, so good at this point in time.
I wish we could expand this conversation more, but in just maybe 10 seconds, the role of youth, of course, in national development has for long been established. Tell us, why should Gambian youth be hopeful?
Gambian youth, as I have mentioned to you, resources are now being provided to the Ministry of Youth in the form of a levy being derived from government identified sources, and that is a very, very big hope. And the fact that we have started implementing a scheme that has never before been implemented across the country is very, very key. And the fact that this particular package, particularly the National Sports, Youth and Sports Levy, is being provided with a collateral that most of the youth should be able to have, they can easily access it. Their entrepreneurial training skills would not go in vain. And the fact that we are replicating some of these training centers across the country. In fact, what we are planning is each region to have a Songhai-like, GSI-like facility. We are working on that, and that's why we've gone to Kundam, and we are identifying certain areas of country like Bambali, so that youths will have something to look at.
I mean, not to cut you there, I think it's interesting, right, that we have all these different things for the young people, and most of them after their trainings are coming up with amazing business ideas. I mean, a saturated market could be a good thing here and there, but they're making sure that these small businesses do not crumble, and that we're not just making the numbers, but we're tapping into the things that can actually be sustainable. Even if it's a small number, right, that can gain impact, it's way more useful than a bigger number that eventually would just be a waste of resources.
The activity of each entrepreneur, as I always tell them in my lectures to them, will depend on the economy of scale of you, the entrepreneur, what you will be able to hold at any given time, so that you can properly manage and adhere to all the rules and the regulations that will make you a successful, prosperous businessman or entrepreneur.
I mean, Piers, it's been interesting hearing you speak, and definitely I'm sure this will not be the last time.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Mr. Marcel Mendy, many thanks for coming on the program as well.
Thank you so much for having us, and look forward to coming over one more time.
Very well. Well, this was all we had time for on today's edition of the Open Governance Initiative. It's been myself, Fatu Eli Kamulushi, the presenter, and today we were looking at the Ministry of Youth and Sports with the Honorable PS, Permanent Secretary Sehu Sanyang. With him here has been the Executive Director at the National Sports Council, Mr. Marcel Mendy. Till we come your way again next week with another ministry looking at very interesting projects they're doing in consolidating the gains as registered in the National Development Plan. Not forgetting that we are coming to you from the Metsi Residence Hotel here in Kotu. Until we come your way again, enjoy the rest of our programs.